So thank you very much for joining us, all of you. And Larry, you've brought along a show bag, so I'm obviously going to start with you.
Gift for you.
Oh, you are a good man. Look at this. Let me hold it up. It's CSIRO. Talk me through the logo there. Is that...
Oh, and I'm going to tell you about it during the session.
Okay, terrific. All right. And I get to keep this. This is exciting.
Yeah. I might have worn it earlier, though.
Makes it even more valuable to me. Larry, as you know, I do always like to ask you, when I interview you, about what are some of your favourite toys, your more exciting developments that are coming online. What is exciting you the most at the moment in the innovation space?
So, just as a surprise, I brought some show and tell. This is going to amaze you, though. So it's this.
That looks a little bit like a lint roller.
This is the latest innovation from your National Science Agency, but there's more.
I'm glad we're spending those billions.
It goes with this. Now, I know it doesn't look that high-tech, but this is a critical piece of social innovation because the whole thing costs less than $1. This part's disposable, so a patient can blow in it, take a sample, throw it away, put another one in. And when you connect it to this, you're able to collect breath samples from potential malaria patients in some of the poorest parts of the earth. Now, this was all enabled by a discovery of minute amounts of trace elements in the breath of patients who were about to contract the disease. So they'd been bitten, it was in their blood, but it was undetectable. And sometimes the incubation period can be long. But this breath measurement, totally non-invasive, no risk of contamination of the medical staff. Great innovation, but how do you deliver it to the poorest parts of the earth and actually deliver the invention to create value? So
and that's less than $1.
Less than $1. I'll show you one other, because I can't resist. Now this is the other end of the spectrum. So this is a 3D printed titanium sternum that saved a man's life in Spain. So it literally replaced half of his rib cage, his sternum, and so on. It's an amazing example of international collaboration. So an Australian material, unique material, Australian capability in scanning and printing the device, done in collaboration with an SME called Anatomics, to save the life of a Spanish man in Spain using a Japanese surgical robot, a German surgeon, a US imaging system, and I think an MRI from Italy. But what an amazing example of international collaboration. Can you imagine the future when we can customize replacement body parts, literally a market of one individuals? It's incredible technology.
I'm guessing that cost more than $1.
Indeed it did.
That is just as impressive. What about in the pipeline? Looking at the big picture, how is Australia travelling at the moment when you think about the sort of startups and innovation that's coming down the pipe?
So there's no shortage of creativity and innovation in Australia. The science is world class, and I think David mentioned that earlier today. But we, just as we do in the resources industry, where we ship raw materials offshore as commodities, and we let other people turn them into high-value products, and then we buy them back, and sometimes at several orders of magnitude higher price. It's similar with our science. We create amazing science, amazing breakthrough inventions, but we tend to license them or give them away, and the value is created offshore, and again, we buy them back. Now, science is not a commodity. It is unique, but we're treating it like a commodity. And just as in the commodities industry, we need to add more value to these raw materials in order to generate the value, create new value at home. And this titanium sternum is a great example. So the innovation is actually taking common Australian mineral sands, extracting the titanium and turning it into titanium ink. So you're going from something that's worthless, or pennies per pound, to hundreds of dollars per pound as titanium ink, to priceless, unique, because it saves someone's life. That's the kind of value add that we need to do in this country, rather than exporting it and then buying it back for orders of magnitude more cost.
Michelle Guthrie, let me ask you the big question for this session. Are we innovating or stagnating when it comes to, and it's not just broadcasting, of course, it's online, it's all areas of news and entertainment and information that the ABC is involved in. When you look at what's happening around the world, whether it's in news or sports broadcasting, entertainment, drama, are we innovating?
In some ways we are, and in some, so I hate to be balanced and have a 50-50 bet, but I think that one of the things that we've always been great at is broadcasting. When you look at the sort of genesis of sports broadcasting in the US, it really all came from fantastic sports broadcasting technology and ways of covering sport out of Australia, and you had a whole lot of executives.
That's probably some time ago, though, isn't it?
Move to the US, but I guess we've seen that, again and again. The same with moves into the UK. I think the thing that we have been slow at, frankly, is probably making that shift from traditional television and radio broadcasting to podcasting and catch-up and other services. I mean, ABC was the first with a catch-up service in our view, but it is extraordinary that we haven't done as much around that, and we've allowed a situation where Netflix has now got 30%.
Who's doing this best? Is it in the US, that sort of digital
Yeah, and
transition?
it's about it's a number of things that have really kind of been the basis of that innovation. One of it is really global scale. Global scale and taking advantage of technology. I mean, my time at Google really taught me that global scale really matters, and Netflix has done an amazing job in terms of global scale. And I look at the ABC and think, why don't we have global scale? Why isn't iView available internationally, for example? Our podcasts are already downloaded increasingly internationally.
A lot of this is because of license restrictions, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, my view is that there's nothing to stop us trying to clear rights for particularly a lot of the programs that we make. A lot of our news and current affairs programs, it's just a question of negotiation for
Because I'm sure a lot of people in this room who do travel abroad would love to be able to take with them, not just iView, but their Australian platforms with them.
Absolutely, and I look at the innovations that Q&A has done in having their streams available on Facebook Live, for example. Well, we actually have partnered with people that are capable of actually delivering that service for us. There's nothing to stop us actually doing the work and making that available on our own platforms as well. But I think it is going to be a combination of partnership models. And I think, again, in terms of stagnating, I'm not so sure that Australian broadcasters have been very good at partnering before. That everything has been, it's 7, 9, 10 all competing with each other, rather than actually saying, how can we work together and do something sort of, with more scale.
Commercial networks working together.
Yes, there we go. I'm an idealist. I'm an
Chris,
idealist.
now your title, as I introduced you, Entrepreneur in Residence. Sounds great. What is an entrepreneur in residence?
So it's the perfect mysterious job title with no real accountability. So it's ideal for me right now. But what it really is so I was at Planet Labs, the company I co-founded with a bunch of friends for about 5 or 6 years. And in the beginning, you have some insight about the world. You see something that you can use for an idea, but a lot of turning a startup into a real company is execution. So you pick your technologies, you make your bets, you put your head down, and you work for 5 years. So the entire world changed in the 5 years while I was doing that. And the very same company that I founded that was disruptive at the time is now vulnerable to disruption. And
how so?
Well, I mean, the technologies have gotten cheaper. There are new software tools out there that allow you to design software. Right now we're using a 5-year-old software development process, and software evolves very fast. So other companies, when we started Planet Labs, so we launched these little remote sensing satellites into space. They take pictures, they send down images. There were no radios fast enough for us to be able to download the entire world's worth of data in one day. So we built our own high-speed radios. So we have 200 megabit links from space with a 2 millisecond ping time. If anyone plays games, use our satellites as a game server because they're fast. But that didn't exist. We spent about 2 years building these radios. But now the space industry's caught up, and actually you can buy those radios from other companies, and they've built them. So if someone else were to start a company like Planet today, they don't need to do 2 years of work. They just buy the part.
So the same question when it comes to the space industry.
Yeah.
Where is Australia at? Are we innovating, or are we stagnating, or are we even in it?
Well, I'm happy to say it's changed a lot since I left. So when I was a uni student, there was no access. I wanted to do space. There was absolutely nothing I could do. So I did a physics degree instead. That was like the best guess at like physics equals astronomy. So it sort of worked out. That was a path somewhere. But now that I've come back and I visit, Sydney Uni where I'm from and a bunch of other schools, every university now has a CubeSat program. And you can launch your own satellite for about $100,000, so if you can mortgage your parents' house, take out a second mortgage, you can have your own space program. And so that has trickled down to schools where every university in Australia should have its own space mission now. And in fact, there was an episode of Catalyst last week where a spacecraft from Sydney Uni was highlighted. And I think that's a really cool achievement, and that was not the case 10 years ago. I think things have really improved.
But is that coming from Australian innovation?
Well, a lot of it was technology or concepts that were developed overseas, but the great thing about a lot of disruptive technologies is they are levelers. They level the playing field. And so right now, to be honest, an Australian family has as much space capability as the Soviet Union had in 1957 when they launched Sputnik.
I love it.
Okay? So if you don't all leave and start your own space program tomorrow, I'll be disappointed.
If we then try and draw whatever link we can across these three sectors in terms of the environment we have in Australia for encouraging innovation, encouraging a startup culture, is there anything in common or any advice that you would have to government and corporate leaders about this sort of culture that we need? Larry?
We'd never give advice to government, God forbid. I can tell you a little bit about the culture change in CSIRO, and maybe that's a good place to start, because it kind of is reflective of the nation more broadly. So when I first came in, there's an antibody reaction to the idea of, quote, an entrepreneur. And there are many scientists who are entrepreneurs. In fact, Silicon Valley was built by scientists who were entrepreneurs. If you ever did any work for Intel, there's a great moment where Andy Grove comes in and he gives you a pitch, gives you a spiel, and tells you the story of why they started, he and Noyce and so on started Intel. And it wasn't because they wanted to be billionaires, it was because they were sick of working at Shockley Labs. And they all decided they'd go and start a company. And they're a bunch of scientists and engineers, very clever people. And they didn't quite exactly know what they were going to do for a while, but they figured out that you could replace the wire loom, the wire wrap of electronics, you could integrate it all into a silicon chip. And so they literally turned sand into a silicon chip, which is the highest value component in the cars and cell phones that we buy from other countries where we ship the raw materials to produce them. And Silicon Valley was built on that. It's an amazing piece of deep technology innovation. I think one of the things that's not appreciated here, the venture industry here has evolved. If you're a digital startup or an internet startup, it's actually quite easy to raise money here. But the science innovation, the deep technology innovation is still unfundable here. And that's a fundamental difference between Silicon Valley and Australia. Now, it's even a little bit worse than that. So last year we started a thing called the ON program, which is what that T-shirt is about. And it's a culture change and an educational program, but it's Australia's only science accelerator. We piloted it in CSIRO, and now we share it with the entire university system. Australia may be the lowest collaborating nation in the OECD, but before we even announced the program, 20 of the nation's 40 universities had already heard about it and signed up to it. Now they're all in it, and we're running active teams, CSIRO people, other public research agencies, and every university in Australia running through this program to help understand what does it mean to be a missionary entrepreneur, a science-based entrepreneur? How do we understand how our science can be delivered to impact? So it's not just an invention, it's an innovation. The amazing thing about this program, other than the fact it's transforming the culture inside the nation's oldest, it's a 100-year-old science agency, for God's sake. It's transforming the culture in that agency, In the United States, Lawrence Livermore, Lawrence Berkeley Labs, heard about the program. They've started their own version of it. Now, why? Why does the US need to do this? Because Silicon Valley has taken a left turn. Silicon Valley's obsessed with funding internet and app startups, and they've forgotten their origins, they've forgotten their roots, they've forgotten the very science that created the internet, that created the ability to have apps and web startups. So the concern the US government has, and the reason these national labs are doing what we're doing, imagine this, they're following Australia. We are leading. It's hard to believe, I know. But the reason they're doing that is because they're worried that in 10 or 20 years' time, they'll fall behind the curve because they're missing the fundamental science that at the heart of it creates new value for their country.
As David Thodey said earlier, we should celebrate that sort of achievement.
We should.
Now, let me turn to a question, Chris, that you actually posed backstage about having spent time out of Australia and how important, in fact, vital that might have been for your career, for where you are today. Michelle, do you want to kick off on that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about that and also follow on a little bit from Larry's comments. I guess the thing that has really struck me as I've come back is that, you know, how do you try to encourage people to embrace change and realize that change is not a bad thing? And you know, after somebody, you know, like me who spent almost 20 years in Asia and kind of, you know, wandering around the world, you see, you know, you can't help but every time I went to Shanghai, you saw change in front of your eyes. You don't necessarily see it in high-speed motion as, you know, in Australia.
Are we more scared of change here?
That's my point. I guess my sense is that as I've been, you know, going around talking to lots of people, particularly outside of the ABC, first question I get, comment I get from anybody is, oh, you know, yeah, you should do whole lot of things, but don't touch that program, or you know, oh, I love that, or I love that, and everybody loves a different thing, but really trying to get both the staff and our audiences, frankly, comfortable with change, that actually, you know, we need to go where the audiences are. So if that requires us to put some programs on Facebook and YouTube and Apple News and Netflix, then that's a great thing because we're actually reaching a bigger audience. And you know, so as we think about ways in which we're going to deliver our programs, increasingly that's not going to be a 30-minute TV program. It might be a, you know, 5-minute iView program. But trying to get that comfortableness, I guess, with change, both, as I said, from an audience perspective and from our staff is critically important. But, you know, one of the things I'm constantly delighted about is just as we try things. I mean, the team has done an amazing job with some of our programs that are iView exclusives. If you haven't seen it, you have to watch You Can't Ask That. It's an incredible program. There's another program, The Catering Show, that you have to watch as well.
I'm a big fan of that.
But, you know, we would never have done those for television first, and we've been able to, you know, use our iView platform as an innovation platform, and they've succeeded so much that we're putting them back onto ABC, you know, TV and putting them on both channels. But it is that sense of really, you know, embracing change. At Google, we used to call it, you know, uncomfortably excited. You have to sort of be happy about the future, but also have butterflies in the bottom of your stomach as well.
Chris, getting back to that question though about time away from Australia, is it important?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's this saying that every Silicon Valley company says, particularly now that I'm at a venture capital firm, I hear this every day, we have the best team in the world. And I'm like, well, where did you hire your people from? And they're like, Stanford and Berkeley. And I'm like, cool, those are definitely top-tier universities, but given that you're the 20th company to tell me that today, and there are only, you know, 2,000 grads last year, how many of them did you get? And so really the truth is, you know, the best people in the world come from, guess what, the world. And so that's also true from Australia. And if you want a team of, you know, the best people in the world, you need to bring them in from around the world, including expatriate Australians. And the same is true for ideas and innovation. And I think I heard earlier that Australia is really good at science, but not so great at the commercialization part. I don't know if that's really still true or not, but it's also possible that the best idea wasn't conceived of here, but was executed well here. And so traveling and getting ideas, I think, and bringing them back to Australia is a huge thing that Advance can help play a role in, and definitely a thing that I think every Australian, I mean, we all travel, right? We're Australians. One of the good things about Australia being far away is that we're brought up young with this idea that traveling's okay, because you've got to travel to get anywhere. You can't just, get in a car and drive to France. So we travel, we should bring that back, and I think some of the best innovations and some of the best people will come from outside, but we can build beautiful things with them here.
You know what? We could keep going, I'm sure, for at least another hour with you three, but the time's beaten us already. It's been far too brief. But look, thank you all very much. In fact, before you go, let's check that poll question we asked at the start. I want to see if the three of you have managed to, turn the tide here at all.
What was the T-shirt logo?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's the on program.
Oh.
Do you believe Australia's innovating or stagnating?
That's one vote.
Boy, oh, boy. I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, but
Oh.
okay, come on, guys, come on, everybody have a vote. Let's do it
Really?
quickly. Get your phone out. Don't be shy.
Goodness.
It's okay. Look at this. It's come down already. Before you came out on stage, I don't know if you saw. Stagnating was over 50%.
Yeah.
Innovating was a little over 20%. So it's improved
And
already.
now people are more unsure
No,
after listening
We
to us.
end on a positive note.
please.
So just cast your mind back 100 years. Australia had just come out of the First World War. Pretty inhospitable place. We didn't have any great differentiating or unfair advantages to the rest of the world. Wool was one of our big products, but nobody wanted it because you couldn't weave it, you couldn't make a suit out of it, you couldn't even wash it. Cotton wouldn't grow here, completely impossible with the type of soil that we have. So what happened? We reinvented wool, we re-engineered it. We invented, using science, ways to weave wool, ways to wash wool, ways to build suits from wool. We reinvented cottonseed, not only so that it would grow in Australia, it's now the top 20% of the world market is Australian cotton, engineered by Australian science. We sent man to the moon. They used Australian technology to beam the signals back and relay footsteps around the world. So Australia, when we set our mind to it, can do just about anything. You may not know this, but today Australia is building the most significant part of the world's largest science experiment, the Square Kilometre Array. So Australian technology is processing more data than the world's internet traffic in a 10 by 20 metre room in Western Australia, all using Australian invented technology. Technology that when I took David to see it, couldn't believe it was possible, and he's a telecom expert. So if we really set our minds to something, we can fundamentally change this country. We did it 100 years ago. We've just sort of forgotten how good we are at it. What's changing, what will change us now, is we have to reinvent the country. The old paradigm won't carry us into the future. Just as an example, we know that digital technology will eat up to 40% of the jobs we know of today. We know that digital technology will consume them over the next 10 to 15 years. How will we reinvent new industries, new jobs, so that we can have the standard of living that we've come to enjoy in this country? Now, if that scares you, don't be scared. We know how to do it. We've done it for 100 years. We just need the motivation to do it again.
That's a terrific note to finish on, Larry, and the numbers shifted while you were talking, so...
Did they go up?
They did go up. They went up. Well done. Would you please thank Larry, Chris and Michelle? A terrific session. Thank you.